Oh, hi there, it's Jack Redley here, and welcome to my award-winning channel. On this channel, I aim to 1. Teach you something about graphic design that you didn't already know, 2. To motivate you to design, and then 3. To inform you about what graphic design books you should get your hands on to improve your designs. This week, I'm going to be presenting this book, Stop Stealing Sheep and Learn How Type Works by Erik Spiekermann and E.M.Ginger. This book has really helped me to improve my designs by having more confidence making the decisions that I'm making with type. So I would highly recommend reading it. Let's get into the 3 biggest takeaways I've got from reading this book. Number 1 biggest takeaway is type with purpose. Have you ever asked yourself, why should we care about type? The reason is because type conveys emotion. The shape, the size, the color of the type is triggering an emotional reaction from whoever reads it before they understand the content of what is written. So, type is vital. As you no doubt already know from watching my previous video where I talked about Simon Sinek's book Start With Why, people don't buy what we do, they buy why we do it. This is to do with emotion. Emotion. As cheesy as it sounds, it's basically the emotional connection that a customer has to a brand, which creates brand loyalty. So through type, you're triggering emotions. Thus, it's a valuable asset to have when you're trying to convey feelings and communicate clearly with a customer. We often buy the typographic promise before knowing much about the product. What this means is that if you see a nice box of chocolates, for example, you might be first attracted to the flourishing type, the script type, which means that it has like connotations of high end and it's really premium product. Maybe you might be willing to pay more for that product because the type suggests this premium product nature. If you're designing products in a specific category, it's important to be aware of what typographic styles your competitors are using. If you're not aware of these and just use a completely different typographic style to the ones that are in that specific category, customers may not recognize what the product is that you're trying to sell because they've become accustomed to seeing a particular style and expecting that particular style being associated with that product. I think it's worth looking at some different typographic styles that fit into particular categories so that you have maybe an idea more of what typographic styles would suit your next design. If you're designing more natural brands, then something like a hand-drawn font might actually suit the purpose better than something that's more formal. However, if you're in finance sector or setting up something in that realm, then something like Interstate is a really solid font for something in this kind of world. Again, a more corporate font is Helvetica, and a lot of established companies have used this great effect. Times New Roman is an obvious choice for body copy in more formal corporate documents. However, something that requires more of a flourish might be Snell Roundhand, which is what's used for invitations. And then Baskerville, Caslon and Garamond are used for body copy. They're the most legible typefaces, so it's something to keep in mind for longer text. If you're setting up a death metal band, Ironwood and Wilhelm Klingspor Gothic would be good. If you're teaching your mate to read and write, then I would recommend Sassoon Primary. Different typefaces convey different emotions due to their physical characteristics. So it's really important to use very, very specific typefaces depending on the project and think about what kind of type is appropriate. Some typefaces were created for very specific purposes. So Comic Sans, for example, should only be used in comics. It shouldn't be used for, say, bank leaflets or whatever else. In fact, it shouldn't really be used. Point number 2 is to do with word layout. So after you've chosen your typeface, it's really, really important to make sure that it's as legible as it possibly can be. And this is to do with how much text there is. If you have a large block of text, you need to adjust the text layout accordingly. Large text should be read the same way a marathon is run. In other words, you need to be comfortable, it needs to build rhythm, and to do that, you need to adjust your line spacing, your letter spacing, and then also the layout. Space between the individual letters is called kerning. You want to avoid gaps in your words, so you may need to adjust individual letters. These are called kerning pairs, particularly problematic ones. Space throughout an entire word is called tracking. Tracking needs to be fractionally wider for longer texts. This is important in body copy particularly. You'll notice on the left that the space in between individual words is a lot wider than on a tabloid newspaper, for example. Third biggest takeaway is know the rules before you break them. Chris Do from the Future, he always talks about how if you don't control type, type controls you. And I think there's a real truth in that. Like, if you don't understand the fundamentals of typography, the quality of your designs just won't be nearly as good. You need to understand spacing and the physical attributes of the letters, and also the history of them and why people attribute certain emotions to the letters, to Bedoni or to Comic Sans or whatever it may be. It's really important to understand those assets. Hopefully, after watching this video, you are now more interested in type and are going to think more critically about which typefaces you use than you did before. If you want more resources to anything in the typographic realm, then click on the links below. There's some really interesting critiques tutorials by the Future with Chris Do. There's a website called Typewolf, which I would highly recommend if you want some original typefaces to use in your designs. And then there's also a link to buy the book with an Amazon affiliate link there, so please do purchase it if you'd like. Next week, I'm going to be doing a really interesting book by an author called Austin Kleon. So I hope to see you here next week. Have a great week, and I will see you then.